Hey everyone, so this week we're going to be talking about all things parasites. So for those of you who have been down the parasite rabbit hole, wanting to learn more about it, wanting to know why it's important to check for it, how to test for it, what it does to your body, the importance of detoxing before you're pregnant, and the fact that this stuff is not just a third world problem, but it is a first world problem. I see them personally in 75% of my patients. Now granted, I do work with gut issues primarily, so you're going to see them a lot more with people who have chronic gut issues. But they are very, very common, very prevalent. I've had so many people send me, massive amounts of pictures when they're detoxing parasites. We're going to talk about testing options, how to detox safely, because you don't want to just jump on a parasite cleanse because a lot of people get really messed up from that. So that's what this episode's covering. So if you're interested in any of that stuff I just mentioned, keep watching. I'm going to cover all that stuff I just talked about. But first I want to start by saying, you guys, this was the thing that was my breakthrough after almost a decade of chronic gut issues, a decade of, constipation, of not being able to eat gluten or dairy, being really restricted in my food choices, because I didn't realize that chronic infections were a thing. Like nobody in the Western medicine world was like, maybe you have parasites or mold toxicity, or maybe a fungal infection in your gut that's creating all these issues. And it was just so frustrating going that long, even though I was already in, like more alternative medicine, as a chiropractor, that I just didn't know this stuff. And it wasn't until my friend had visited me in town when I was basically on the verge of probably an autoimmune disorder. I was having all sorts of weird symptoms, which I'm going to talk about during the video. But she figured out, she was like, hey, Kate, I think you have parasites. Like, I think that this is a big thing that you're dealing with based on everything you've told me. And once she figured that out and I healed, for the first time in about 10 years, I could eat bread again. I could drink milk again. I didn't have bloating. I looked like I'd lost weight because there was so much inflammation in my abdomen that I didn't realize was just inflammation. And, I had so many profound effects. Like I could actually go to the bathroom normally. I still can go to the bathroom normally because I took care of the problem. So if you guys missed my first video, I talk about finding the root cause of your issue. So important. You can be hyper focused on getting to removing from your body what actually shows up on testing and what is actually causing the problem in your body. And so that's what I did. Parasites were the main thing. I had lots of other issues as well, but that was the big breakthrough for me. I mean, I passed a 3-foot long parasite, day 5 of the parasite cleanse that she put me on. And I think the second or third month we were working together, because you do have to do other things prior to removing infections. I'm going to talk about in this video as well, how to do things safely so you don't get a detox reaction. But this was life-changing for me, you guys. This is what got me into functional medicine. I started, I was telling all my patients in my chiropractic practice about it, and they're like, oh, I want to do that. And so I started working with them, started getting phenomenal results, in all realms of health, not just gut health, but also hormones, people being able to get pregnant again, naturally, mental health improving, brain function improving, all these amazing benefits. And it was just so cool. And now I get to do this stuff full time because I've just had such a profound impact in the people I've treated and my own health. And so I'm really excited to share this one with you. This is one of my favorite videos that I've been putting together because I literally was looking for this for 9 years. And I finally got to the root cause, fixed the issue. And now I'm able to, do this for other people who are suffering and who are struggling. So if you're someone who's had chronic gut issues for a while, diet's not working, supplements aren't working, this is a video that you're going to want to, save, bookmark for later if you don't have time to watch the whole thing right now, because it's probably going to provide so much insight into what's going on in your body, especially if you have bloating, especially if you have pain around your belly button area, especially if you have constipation. Those are the 3 main symptoms I see with people who have parasites. And you guys, again, this is not a third world problem. This is found in America, it's found in Canada, Australia, all these first world countries. I'm going to show you guys a bunch of case studies from all of those countries showing you how prevalent this stuff actually is. Now, it's not to say that you need to go out and be freaked out about eating fish or having pets or, putting your feet in the earth. When you have a normally functioning immune system, when your gut is healthy, when your drainage pathways work and you're able to get toxins out of your body, when your immune system can actually fight off infections and get the toxic waste out, this isn't an issue. You should be able to go travel to a foreign country or eat, sushi or, play with your cats or your dogs and not get infected by this stuff. But it's when our body starts breaking down over a long period of time
And now all of a sudden, maybe our gut is only functioning at 60% instead of 100. Most of your immune system lives in the gut. The gut is literally the probably the center of pretty much every major health issue. And I'm going to talk about that as well later in the video. But when these systems start breaking down and you're no longer able to remove toxins, you're no longer able to fight off infections, that's when this stuff becomes a problem. So once you fix the issue, it shouldn't matter. Like, you shouldn't have to worry the rest of your life about, avoiding parasites. Like, I still eat sushi. I was eating sushi while I was detoxing, even though she recommended me not to, but it's okay. We all have our vices. And she would joke with me. My friend. She was just like, oh my God, you're just reinfecting yourself as you're detoxing them. And I'm like, no, I'm just killing them off, as I'm eating them. It's fine. But you guys, I haven't had issues with it since then. I have yet to see a parasite come out, and it's been years. So this stuff is life-changing for a lot of people, mostly because a lot of people are really shut down in the medical community. They're told by doctors, oh, this doesn't happen. Oh, you didn't travel outside the country. There's no way you could have a parasite infection. They're very, very hard to detect on testing. So I'm going to talk about that later in the video about, what tests I recommend, which ones are the best. Because I had done a parasite test that showed up negative, 8-9 years ago. Or I guess now it's been like 10 or 11 years, but yeah, long time ago. And it showed that I was negative. And, then I found a better test that showed I was positive, and I saw those suckers coming out for 6 months. Like, all different shapes and sizes. I had liver flukes come out. I had a giant, I believe it was a ropeworm or a roundworm. That was the big 3-footer. I had several that were 1 to 2 feet long, like just massive amount of parasites just getting out of my body. So this stuff is real. It does happen in first world countries. Yes, I've gone out of the country a lot, but I was having these symptoms since I was a kid. And that's why I'm going to be talking to you guys about why it's so important to detox before you have children, before you get pregnant, because this stuff, parasites, there are 5 strains of parasites that can cross the placenta from the mom into her child. So this is something you don't want to mess around with. I'm going to show you some case studies of, kids who have parasite infections and all the crazy symptoms that you see. So if you have a kid with eczema, you're gonna wanna watch this video. Pretty fascinating stuff. So number 1, this is not a third world problem. Don't let your doctor gaslight you and tell you, oh, it's all in your head. There's no way this could be parasites. It absolutely could be parasites. So that's number 1. I just want you guys to know that if your doctor's told you otherwise, we don't know everything. That's why it's called the practice of medicine. Also, as I talked about in my previous video, go check that one out. About why your medical diagnosis doesn't matter. I went into in depth on why doctors don't know this stuff, because that is probably the number 2 question I get from people who reach out to me on Instagram. They say, why didn't my doctor ever tell me this? Why are they gaslighting me? Why are they telling me it's all in my head? And then we do testing and we find multiple infections, multiple toxins, leaky gut, all sorts of bad dysfunction with the liver, the gallbladder, all these issues that their doctor never picked up on. And it's not their fault, you guys. They are a product of what they've been taught. And the education system is so fraught with corruption. It's really bad in medical schools. So again, go watch my video if you want to learn more on that, about the corruption of the medical system and what these students are taught. But there are a lot of great MDs out there. You just got to find them. Most of them are just going to stick with what they were taught in school. And that's the unfortunate part of pretty much any profession. It's like you have maybe 20% who are really good at what they do because they never stop learning. And then you have an 80% who, maybe the middle 50 are good, but they're not great. And then the bottom 30 are the ones who barely made it out of school and, are still doing their profession, but probably not in the best way possible. So it's like that in every profession, you guys. It's not just MDs, but it's becoming more of an issue because a lot of people are so sick of the sick care model of, I come in with symptoms, I get a ridiculous blanket diagnosis that doesn't tell me what's going on, and then they offer a drug or a treatment or therapy or nothing because they're like, you just have to live with this. This is you. That's not true. So don't listen to every doctor, including me. I don't know everything. I'm constantly learning new stuff, but that's the mark of a good doctor is they're constantly going to seminars, they're constantly reading research, they're constantly learning from other people, and they are not afraid to say, I don't know. I need to learn more about this. I need to research this. That is a good sign of a good doctor, you guys. So don't poop on the whole medical system. There are amazing doctors out there, some who really do a great job of picking up on, this might be parasitic, maybe we should do some testing. But just know that the standard tests for parasites, most of them will show up negative. So I'm gonna talk about that later. But yeah, so number 1 is if you've been gaslit, if you've been told it's all in your head, it's not. But
I'm going to be talking about how parasites can create things like cancer. Mental illness is a big, big thing with parasite infections. So we're going to talk about that as well. But yeah, so lots of stuff to cover in this video. I'm really excited. I first want to start by talking about how parasites affect the gut. So again, like I talked about earlier, bloating, constipation, pain around the belly button area, like sharp stomach pain. Those are 3 of the biggest signs I see in adults who have parasitic infections. When it's a kid, teeth grinding, wetting the bed at a really, high age, like, 8, 9, 10 years old, still wetting the bed. It's a big sign of parasites. If you've ever had, and this, people don't know this one, if you've ever had a giant fluid-filled cyst removed from your abdominal cavity, specifically in the abdomen, that is probably the #1 sign of parasites. And I wish I had known this when I was 18, because I had a huge fluid-filled cyst the size of a grapefruit removed from my abdomen. They sent it was like this dark black liquid. They sent it to the path lab and they're like, we don't know what it is. And I never got any answers of like, what the heck was growing in my body? Like, why was it the size of a grapefruit before I felt any pain? And I'd had all those issues. I'd had bloating, I'd had constipation, I'd had stomach pain around my belly button, but I just thought like, oh, this is normal, because you don't know as a kid, like you're eating garbage. I was one of those skinny fat people, so I could just eat candy all the time and like mac and cheese and still weigh nothing. So kind of tanked my body a little bit. So you guys, diet does matter. It doesn't matter if you're skinny. It doesn't mean you're healthy. So if you're one of those skinny fat people, just know that what you put in your body does absolutely matter, and it can tank your immune system because your gut has 80% of your immune system in it. So we want to treat our bodies like a temple, guys. Don't put garbage in there. So yeah. Anyways, but it affects the gut pretty significantly. So parasites, what they'll do is most of them will hide in the gut. They can go everywhere else in the body though. It's not just the intestines that parasites are found in. Flukes are typically found in the liver, so they're called liver flukes. We're going to talk about their link to cancer in a little bit. But these parasites will basically form what's called a biofilm in your intestinal lining. So it's basically just this film that covers the lining, which prevents your good bacteria from actually producing nutrients, absorbing nutrients. Your bacteria have so many different functions, you guys. They also help produce and store the chemicals in your brain that make you happy and joyful. So most people don't know this, but 95% of serotonin, which is the hypothesis behind depression, is like low serotonin, 95% is stored in the gut. It's not stored in your brain. It's a gut issue. It's not always a brain issue. Now, obviously there are other things that can trigger depression, like people with PTSD, and there's obviously like traumas that can happen, and that's a whole other side of the coin. But a lot of people don't know that depression does start in the gut. If you have an unhealthy gut, that can really, really affect your mental health. And so parasites are linked to mental health disorders, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But yeah, so they form biofilms, and what happens is it's kind of like a little like canopy in your intestinal lining that other infections like viruses, bacteria, fungal infections, mold can hide under and basically hide from your immune system. So your immune system can't detect that there's anything else there. And so it just passes over and it just goes undetected for a really long period of time. So that's the biggest thing that parasites do, is they're very stealthy. They can hide from your immune system really, really well. But the other big thing too is when you have those drainage pathways back up, or they're not doing their job of detoxing properly and getting toxic waste out of your body, so gut, gallbladder, liver, if you're not pooping 2 to 3 times a day, or if you're on carnivore diet 1 time a day, then you're already backed up in the gut. Also, if you have like, other gut symptoms like diarrhea or bloating or, acid reflux, belching, all that stuff, then that's a sign that there's something going on. But what happens is basically they can hide other infections, so your immune system can't really tell what's going on. But if your immune system does pick up on the parasites and it starts killing them off, they actually release a ton of toxins when you kill them off. It's kind of like their last dying breath of like, kind of just, like their last dying breath of, here you go, here's a bunch of toxic waste, good luck. And so they're kind of turds in that sense of just being just horrible infections to have in your body, because they release so many toxins when your immune system kills them off, or when you try to detox them. So that's why it's so important to make sure you have good organ function, you guys. Gut, gallbladder, liver have to be functioning before you start killing this stuff off. Otherwise, you'll get really bad toxicity reactions, detox reactions Herxheimer reactions, or if you've ever heard of herxing, that's usually what happens when people try to detox parasites without fully knowing the whole picture of how complicated it can be and how you have to look at every single piece of the puzzle to get those suckers out, because they are tricky, they are hard to get rid of. For me, I had them coming out for 6 months, like consistently, like I was seeing them in my, like almost every bowel movement. And then after that, I would see them every now and then, but I was probably seeing them for up to a year, maybe a little over a year, because I just was so infested with parasites. And not everyone's like that. Most people I work with, they maybe see them coming out for a couple weeks or a couple months and then they're totally good. For some reason, my body had just built up so many parasites in my system. I just had them coming out for a really, really long time. So they are tricky. They're hard to get rid of. And another thing they do is parasites will actually hold on to heavy metals in your body. So they will basically use heavy metals as kind of a shield to kind of hide from your immune system, so that you're unable to actually kill them off. So they're very sneaky. They're very, very smart creatures. I remember taking a parasitology class in undergrad because I wanted to, go infectious disease and the MD route initially before I decided on chiropractic school instead. But that was my favorite class because the teacher was amazing. First of all, it's always a good reason. But it was crazy how smart these little creatures are. Like, they're extremely intelligent. They can hide from your immune system very, very well. They can go anywhere in the body. So they can lodge in your kidneys, your liver, your brain, your muscle tissue, your lung tissue. And there's certain signs and symptoms for each of those that I'll talk about as well. But they are just so sneaky. They're so hard to get rid of. So that's why it's so important to get some good testing done, you guys. Make sure that we're ruling that out because they are very hard to pick up on traditional stool testing. And then also making sure you're doing a very specific, very targeted detox program. And that's why it's so incredibly important to work with a naturopath, work with a functional medicine doctor, somebody who knows what they're doing, instead of just giving you a parasite tincture and being like, good luck on your own. And then you have to see me because you got messed up and you had a bad detox reaction, which is probably about 10 to 15% of the people I work with are the ones who tried to detox themselves, didn't know what they were doing, didn't know about drainage pathways, didn't know how important it was to heal those organs before killing off infections. Otherwise, you're just releasing a ton of toxins into a system that's basically plugged up. Like, think about the plug on your sink drain in your bathroom, like where you pull that thing up and it just clogs the sink so that you can fill it with water. That's basically what's happening in your body. If you don't get that drainage pathway to open up and let those toxins out, you're just building on an already toxic system, and that's when people can get really, really bad reactions. So super important, always check drainage pathways, always figure out, well, what is damaging the liver? What is damaging the gallbladder? Because a lot of times parasites aren't found alone. They work together with other things in your body, specifically viruses. They're almost always found, I wouldn't say almost always, but they're very commonly found with Lyme disease. So a very common co-infection is to find viral infections or bacterial with Lyme. Another thing is they're almost always found with heavy metals. So if you just detox parasites, but you don't check for heavy metals and you don't get those out of your system, you're not going to get all the parasites out and they're just going to grow back. There are some parasites that can actually lay, tens of thousands of eggs per day. So these things are nasty. Not all of them. There's only a few that can actually complete their full life cycle in your body. But the ones who do, they just cause so much damage. They can, travel through the body. So if you've ever had migrating joint pain, where one day it's your left elbow, the next day it's your right ankle, the next day your low back hurts, it's called migrating joint pain because it's not the same spot every day. That's a huge sign of parasites because they move throughout your whole body. And I'm going to show you some case studies here that are pretty horrifying where people have had, those migrating parasitic infections and doctors couldn't explain it until they, usually it's an accidental discovery in surgery, or a doctor who really knows what they're doing and is like, this doesn't add up. Maybe we should, cut this thing out that keeps popping up on your face and see what it is. So yeah, we're gonna go through that. But the biggest thing to know, you guys, is that they really, really wreck your gut. They can create leaky gut probably faster than any other infection. That and fungus are typically the top two that I see for leaky gut issues. Leaky gut is a really bad disorder that can lead to autoimmune disease later on. So if you guys want more info on that, I've got a ton of leaky gut videos on my Instagram account. You can go check those out. And I'll be doing a longer form video on leaky gut as well at some point. But I just wanted to get the parasite video up because this is the one that people love learning about. They want more information on it. So I just wanted to put up a really long form content video so you guys can get all your questions answered about parasites. And and just get you on the right track of healing them properly, not rushing it, not trying to just do a quick fix, but like really looking at how is the whole body functioning and where do I start to be able to safely detox these parasites out of my body, because it will be life-changing. If that is your issue that's creating all the symptoms that you're having, you're going to notice a profound difference in your energy, in your mood, in your sleep, in your bowel movements, in bloating, in your mental health, and it's just going to be profound. So I'm really excited for you guys to learn this stuff. It completely changed my life. I honestly didn't think I would ever be able to eat bread ever again, because I had such an extreme reaction. Every time I'd eat pizza, I'd be bloated and constipated for like 5 to 7 days. It was terrible. So I still did it because, you know, who doesn't love pizza? But I suffered and it was not fun. So yeah, so not a good thing to have. So parasites affect the gut. The gut affects every single system in your body. So your gut helps regulate thyroid hormones. That's where T4 is converted into T3. So if you have hypothyroidism, it could be a gut issue, not necessarily a thyroid issue. It affects sex hormones. There's actually a group of bacteria in the gut called the estrobolome that helps regulate estrogen in the body. It affects mental health, like I talked about earlier. It produces dopamine and serotonin, and most of that is stored in the gut. I believe it's 70% of dopamine, 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut and produced by the gut bacteria. So if you have constant damage to your gut lining, you're basically killing off all that good bacteria that's helping regulate hormones, that's helping produce, you know, those chemicals that make you happy so mental health can set in, that's regulating thyroid hormones. So you might notice you get weight gain, hair falling out, dry skin, cold hands and feet, all those thyroid symptoms that people experience a lot, constipation. But yeah, they also cause constipation because what happens is these things are smart, right? So parasites, like just the term in general just means that they are basically feasting off of all your nutrients and they're not providing you any benefit. That's like the definition of a parasite. It's a one-way relationship. So they'll secrete a toxin in your intestinal wall to actually paralyze the smooth muscles that are around your intestines. So these smooth muscles basically contract to allow, you know, your waste products or your poop to get through your intestines and go out into the toilet. These parasites will secrete a toxin that paralyzes that muscle. So now all of a sudden we're not getting that peristaltic contraction is what it's called. And this fecal matter is building up. And what the parasites do is they paralyze the gut or those muscles so they can feast on all the food that you just put in your system. So people who have parasites are very nutrient deficient because the parasites are eating all their food. So you could have the best diet in the world, but you're not absorbing anything. So this is a huge absorption issue, one of the biggest things that parasites cause in the gut. And nutrient deficiencies can lead to so many different issues with people, you know, organ dysfunction, brain fog, hormone issues, because you need nutrients to create everything in your body, obviously. So really big thing, you'll see B vitamin deficiencies are pretty common with parasites just because they're wrecking the gut lining. B vitamins are produced and absorbed in the gut. So the gut is kind of the epicenter of pretty much every system in the body. So that's why it's so incredibly important to heal that first. And to figure out, first of all, what's damaging the gut. Because if it is parasites, it's pretty profound when you remove them. People's pain goes away, their energy gets better, their brain fog gets better because there's that gut-brain connection where the bacteria in your gut also communicate with your brain, which is kind of crazy. But that's why it's called your second gut. So all these different functions, but you guys, the gut, this is how parasites can cause chronic disease. Because if you start breaking down that gut lining and you get to leaky gut, where now waste products are slipping into your bloodstream and going systemic throughout the body, now you're getting all these toxins causing inflammation in the brain, in the kidneys, in the lungs, in the skin. People have tons of skin issues when they have parasites. And leaky gut is also known to be the precursor to all autoimmune disease. This was proven about, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, but all autoimmunity. So these things can cause a wide array of different diseases that people are being diagnosed with nowadays. So if you have those 3 symptoms I talked about in the beginning, bloating, constipation, pain around your belly button area, you don't want to just wait for those symptoms to get worse, because if you leave that for a long period of time and the gut lining starts to break down and you initiate a full-blown autoimmune disease, that is very, very hard to fix. Like people I've worked on with autoimmunity, it takes probably about 9 to 12 months to get them, you know, feeling good again. Like they are very reactive to everything. You have to heal the gut first, but there's so much damage going on that it takes a long time for that to heal. So don't wait till your symptoms are that bad. Heal the gut. If you ever have gut issues, do not wait to fix that stuff because it can cause so many other issues later on that you do not want to deal with. It's really, really bad. So
do not ignore gut symptoms. Parasites are a big destroyer of the gut. So really, really important that we're always checking for that and we're doing it in a good way to not miss them. And we're also checking for all other co-infections and all other toxins because they all work together. The body doesn't work in isolation. Every organ communicates with, the other organs as well. So we can't just fix a gut issue by treating just the gut. We can't fix a brain issue by just fixing the brain. Everything communicates, everything works together. So we've got to look at this as one whole picture. But gut damage is really, really huge. That's what leads to chronic disease. So really, really important to take care of that. Another one is cancer. So this one kind of surprises people a lot. But yeah, so we've known for decades that there are certain parasites that can actually cause liver cancer, bile duct cancer, that's your gallbladder, and bladder cancer. So 2 of the 3 drainage pathways, gallbladder and liver, can be attacked by the parasites and create cancer in people. And we've known this. Like if you go look on the WHO's website, they classify this type of parasite. So they're called flukes. So liver flukes are a big one. But yeah, so it's in a broad category of parasites called the helminth family. But the WHO classifies them as class 1 carcinogens. That's basically the same as asbestos and all those other dangerous chemicals that we've removed off the market because they literally are known to create cancer. So class 1 carcinogen is one of the worst classifications you can have as a cancer-causing agent. So pretty crazy. There's three flukes that are actually known to cause these 3 types of cancer. So if you know anyone who's been diagnosed with liver cancer, gallbladder cancer, bladder cancer, really important, try to get them to go to a naturopath and see if they can do some testing for parasites because a lot of times that's the cause of this. And the reason why, and this article talks about it, is it says that flukes constantly wound and re-wound their host as they latch on with their feeding cavity, burrow through organs. And if y'all have ever seen a picture of parasites, they literally have like teeth that they like latch on. They damage tissue. They can actually create anemia in people. So if you've had chronic anemia for a long time, that's something to check is parasites. Forgot to mention that earlier. But yeah, they burrow through your tissue, and that's when you get those, the traveling joint pain or the migrating joint pain is because they're moving through your body and damaging tissue along the way. But basically they latch on with their feeding cavity, they burrow through organs and they deposit eggs in the bladder wall. So that's a big thing for bladder cancer. And this leads to chronic inflammation. In my last video, I talked about how inflammation is the root cause of every single chronic disease. We need to figure out what's causing the inflammation, not focus on labeling it as a disease and give people anti-inflammatories. That's not going to fix the issue. What is actually causing that inflammation? So in this case, it's parasites. So it leads to chronic inflammation as the body tries endlessly to heal, meaning lots of cell division, and so lots of opportunities for cancer-causing mutations to accumulate over years of infection, which is why it's so important to not ignore these symptoms, you guys. Don't blow it off as normal. That's complete garbage. The fluke's toxic toilet habits then add insult to injury. So basically what it's saying is parasites poop in your body. They got to poop somewhere. So they're basically creating waste products all the time in your body. They're releasing toxins to paralyze that wall to create constipation. And then when your immune system kills them off, they release more toxins. And they're just the worst. Like these parasites are so crazy. And then it also says that worms and their eggs also excrete proteins that exacerbate this chronic inflammation, further promoting cell division as well as the blood vessel growth required to feed it. So you guys, if you've ever looked at cancer cells on imaging, they always have a ton of blood flow and blood vessels going to the cancer cells. So if you're constantly having damage to an organ and your body's creating more microvessels and more blood flow to this area, that can also help feed cancer if it ever does form. So really, really important to consider that as well. All right. Let me just see here, because there was, I believe, an article I wanted to read as well. Okay, no, that was pretty much everything on cancer. But yeah, they label 3 parasites as class 1 carcinogens. So pretty crazy. If you have parasites, it can give you cancer. It's absolutely wild that is a thing. Oh yeah, found it. Yeah, so it says classified as group 1 carcinogens by the World Health Organization, their agency for research on cancer. And it's basically liver flukes. Those are gonna be really hard to pronounce, but it's basically 3 types of liver flukes that are found in your body. So
I saw a pretty big liver fluke come out. They look very distinct. I'm gonna put a picture up here so you guys can see it. I saw some pretty, like at least 2 big ones that were probably the size of a dime, I would say, come out of my body. So I was like, thank God I got those out, because I mean, if this is known to cause cancer, hallelujah that it's not in my body anymore, because you can see some big ones come out on people. It's pretty disturbing. I probably saw like 4 or 5 come out total. But yeah, liver flukes are nasty. They can cause all sorts of terrible diseases in people. So yeah, cancer is a big one that people don't think about. All right, another thing I want to talk about, you guys, is parasites in mental health. This stuff will blow your mind. So there's a huge connection. And honestly, when I first started treating my chiropractic patients who, you know, had gut issues, I was kind of baffled, and this happens a lot, you guys, that people's anxiety, their depression, and panic attacks will virtually almost completely go away in most people. You know, most people will get like at least 70 to 80% improvement in depression and anxiety. I had one patient who used to have panic attacks all the time. 0 now. Like she's probably, 3 months into detoxing, 0 panic attacks anymore. She saw a ton of parasites come out. Another woman whose depression completely went away, and she was in her 60s. She'd had it her whole life. She had parasites come out. All these people who get these crazy, mental health issues that they don't know where it comes from. Sometimes it's just an infection. And again, it's not all the time. I know there's other factors, like traumas and PTSD and things like that we have to take into account. But I was shocked that, people, they came to me for gut issues and they left not only with a better gut, but also their mental health drastically improved. Anxiety gone, panic disorders gone, depression gone, or at least 70 to 80% better in a lot of people. So it's pretty profound how these infections can influence your mental health. And again, it goes back to the gut, right? So if we're destroying the gut with all these infections or toxins, but in this case, we're talking about parasites. So if this infection is constantly destroying your gut, not only is your immune system tanking, because 80% of your immune system lives in the gut, so now these parasites can overgrow even more because their immune system is weak, and then they just replicate faster and faster over a long period of time. But also, our gut bacteria are getting wiped out. So they're no longer able to produce serotonin. They're no longer able to produce dopamine and store it in the gut to help with mental health. And there's also, an article in here that talks about how gut health can affect the neurotransmitters in your brain, which is kind of wild. So yeah, regulation of neurotransmitters by the gut microbiome and effects on cognition and neurological disorders. So it's basically just saying that your gut bacteria, if they're messed up, it can mess up your brain health and create a lot of neurological issues. And one thing that severely messes up your gut health are parasites. So it's pretty wild how they can really affect almost every single system in your body. But I'm gonna read you these 2 articles here. They're pretty crazy. One is called Host-Parasite Interaction Associated with Major Mental Illness. This is from 2019, published in a psychiatry journal. But it says, clinical studies frequently report that patients with major mental illness, such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, have comorbid physical conditions, suggesting that systemic alterations affect both brain and peripheral tissues might underlie the disorders. Numerous studies have reported elevated levels of anti-toxoplasma gondii antibodies in patients with major mental illness. So basically what this means is there are so many studies reporting that people with mental illness have very elevated levels of antibodies against a certain type of parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. That's the one that's found in cats specifically. So you're constantly scooping. That's why they say when you're pregnant, don't scoop cat litter, because you could potentially get this parasite that is known to cross the placenta and go into your kid. So this is the one that they're talking about when they say, if you have cats, don't scoop the litter when you're pregnant, because you could get this parasite and it can affect your child, which is not good. But it can also affect you, because high reports of mental illness in people, with these issues. And then there's another one that says impact of parasitic infection on mental health and illness in humans in Africa. So they obviously went to Africa for this one. But it says, and this is wild, you guys. An overall odds ratio found that the association of having a mental illness when testing positive for a parasitic infection was 4 times that of people without infection. So you are 4 times more likely to have a mental health disorder if you are infected with parasites. That is profound, you guys. A 400% increase in mental health illness, like, come on.
So if you start detoxing parasites from people, you will see their anxiety drastically go down. You'll see their depression drastically go down. Again, I told you I had that one patient who used to have panic attacks all the time, doesn't have them anymore. I mean, this stuff is it's just wild how this stuff can affect not only your gut, but also your mental health. And again, we're indirectly influencing the brain because it's destroying that gut lining and, you know, altering that gut-brain connection as well. So yeah, so mental health, big thing to consider is, do you just have a chronic infection? Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe you don't need to be on, you know, antidepressants or, you know, anti-anxiety meds like your doctor's telling you to do. Maybe we need to look at another area and see, hey, can we improve or completely get rid of this mental health issue by addressing infections like parasites? So just something to consider. Again, don't get mad at me for saying it. I'm just showing you what the research says. So, but yeah. All right, and then let's talk about why you should always detox before you get pregnant. There are multiple parasites, the Toxoplasma gondii that we were just talking about in that last article, that are known to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier, to cross the placenta and go into your child that is developing, that doesn't have a fully formed system to help fight this stuff off while you're pregnant. So if you have health issues, fix your health issues before trying to have kids. You're gonna have a much healthier kid. They're not gonna have as many skin issues. Eczema is a huge one for kids who have parasite infections. So you'll see a lot of really bad eczema in kids, and I'll show you that in a second. But basically this article is saying, so it's called Transmission of Parasites Across the Placenta. This was from 1982. So we've known this for 40 plus years, and yet your doctor is telling you, oh, this doesn't happen in America. It totally does. All right, anyways, the parasites that can be transmitted from mother to fetus in utero are, and you'll see these 5 on here, Toxoplasma, Plasmodium, Trypanosoma, Leishmania, and helminths. Helminths are those class 1 carcinogens we just talked about, the liver flukes. So, something to think about. The drastic raise in childhood cancers, could it be parasite related? Maybe, maybe not. Obviously, there's so many other factors. Our food supply is really terrible in America. There's tons of chemicals that are banned in almost every other country that are allowed in America. So there's all sorts of, you know, factors to consider. But it's just a question that I came across when I was researching this stuff is, okay, if these liver flukes are considered class 1 carcinogens and they're known to create cancer, if they can cross the placenta from the mom into the kid, could that be something that is triggering all these kids from getting, you know, really rare cancers that we never saw in children, you know, like 60 to 100 years ago? So just something to consider. I don't know the answer to that, just a question that I've always kind of been curious about, because obviously, you know, mainstream doctors aren't always testing people for these infections. They're just looking at, okay, your immune system's messed up, let's do chemo, let's do radiation, and let's not look at anything else. So, but then there's also, you know, naturopaths and functional medicine doctors who are looking at everything. They're like, hey, let's support the environment in your body to make it so that it can't support the growth of cancer, because cancer can't exist in an oxygenated environment. So that's why you see that a lot of naturopaths and those, you know, those integrative cancer specialists who will actually use ozone therapy in hyperbaric chambers, because it drastically increases oxygen in your body, and cancer can't thrive in an oxygenated environment. So lots of stuff you can do. That's not just mainstream, chemo, radiation, all that stuff. There's so many other ways to support your body as you're fighting off cancer, but obviously we don't want it to get to that point. So that's why it's so important, you know, guys, don't wait till you have symptoms to treat your body, because it could be too late. A lot of times symptoms are the last thing to show up and the first thing to go away. So even just as a general, you know, like if you're in your 30s and 40s and you just want to maintain your health long-term, go see a naturopath, go see a functional med doc, get these tests done, make sure that you're not having anything in your body that's creating massive inflammation that could trigger a chronic disease or autoimmune disorder or cancer later on. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. All right, so maternal parasitic infections can affect the fetus in 2 ways: by direct invasion of the fetus by the parasites, and indirectly by lowering maternal health to such a level as to interfere with the fetal well-being. So how many people have dangerous pregnancies nowadays? Actually a little bit higher than you think. Like, you know, in a chiropractic practice, I see relatively healthy people, but I wouldn't say pretty common, but more common than you would think. There's people who just have really dangerous pregnancies. They have to have emergency, you know, surgeries, emergency visits to the hospital that they weren't expecting. A lot of this could just be, maybe they have an underlying infection that nobody ever treated, nobody ever caught. So just something to think about. Again, I don't know the answer. This is just stuff that I think about So I'm curious y'all's thoughts. If you have any thoughts on that, just definitely leave a comment below. I'd love to hear y'all's input. But yeah, so this stuff can cross your placenta and create all sorts of issues. So I want to show you all these issues that I'm talking about, because you guys, if you've never really looked into parasites and you're watching this video, you're probably like, what in the heck is going on? Is this really that common? Yes, it is. Good Lord. So again, they are not just third world problems. So let me just show you the effects of parasites in kids. So we'll never know, did the mom have parasites and the parasites passed to the kid? It was an infant, so it's like I have a hard time believing there was any other exposure to parasites besides in the womb. So this one just talks about, this is from 2005, a helminth infection, so those liver flukes, the ones that cause cancer, or can cause cancer, during pregnancy and development, oh yeah, so she did have an infection during pregnancy, and development of infantile eczema. So this kid, I mean, look at this poor kid's face. Like, that is probably one of the most severe cases of eczema I have ever seen. But yeah, it just shows you, you know, when you destroy that gut lining, one of the major systems that will try to detox for you, because now your gut's not working, is your skin. So that's why a lot of kids who have parasites, who have other toxins that are destroying the gut lining, they will have eczema or, you know, dry skin or skin rashes that don't make sense, or hives, or all these crazy things that we're seeing in kids nowadays that didn't used to be there, at least not at this level. And a lot of that is just because of underlying infections, you guys. So this is stuff that does happen in first world countries. It's not always, you know, overseas or in, you know, underdeveloped countries. I'm going to show you a lot of articles about, you know, people in Australia, Canada, the US who had crazy parasites that were found by their doctor. And thank goodness their doctor was actually looking. But yeah, so here's one article from the New York Times. She was depressed and forgetful, depression, mental health. It was the worm in her brain. So this doctor in Australia found a 3-inch live parasitic worm in a woman's brain during surgery after they'd spent more than a year trying to find the cause of her distress. How many times do people go to the doctor and the doctor tells them it's all in your head? Oh, you're just worrying too much. It's just anxiety, just de-stress, you know, just calm your nervous system. There are infections in the body that can create physiological reactions that give you depression, anxiety, panic attacks, constantly worrying about your body and your health. It's not always in your head. And oftentimes it's almost not in your head. Like, I've met very few people where I'm like, I think this is actually a mental health issue. Most of the time it's something that was undetected because the doctors, they're not trained to look for parasites, to look for heavy metals, to look for mold, to look for any of the stuff that we do, that functional med docs do, that naturopaths do. And so it's just unfortunate because a lot of people just don't get answers. They're gaslit by the medical community. They're labeled as crazy, or it's just stress. And this surgeon literally just goes in for brain surgery to be like, what the heck's going on? And finds a live parasite. It was still wriggling around. Disgusting. This is in Australia, you guys. It's not a third world country. All right, another one. A woman, oh, I think this one was in the US. I think it was up in Oregon. All right, so. A woman jogged through a swarm of flies, and a month later, she pulled a parasitic worm from her eye. I mean, that's just gross. But yeah, this woman literally found a parasite in her eye, couldn't figure out what it was for the longest period of time, and then they finally traced it back to her running through a swarm of flies. You can get parasites from any insect, you guys. They're a lot more common than you think they are. But I'm pretty sure this one was up in Oregon, if I remember correctly. I'll have to look that up later. All right, here's another one. Woman's brain tumor turns out to be parasite growing in her head. So this one was nuts. It literally says, a parasite in the brain sounds like the plot of a horror movie, but it's a preventable infection from tapeworm that can be found in pork. So this woman somehow picked up a tapeworm. They basically went in for brain surgery and they found an encapsulated tapeworm larva, basically just a baby tapeworm inside this capsule that they thought was brain cancer. So this lady literally got diagnosed with brain cancer. They went in for surgery. They opened her up. They pulled it out and realized it was a baby tapeworm that had been encapsulated inside her brain. And thank God it was encapsulated and didn't just start moving around, because it would have damaged all of her brain tissue and caused worse issues. But holy cow! So yeah, that one definitely sounded like a horror movie. Oh, this one was wild. Woman's grapefruit-sized liver cancer tumor was actually a parasite. So again, these parasites will destroy your organs. They'll like damage the tissue. They'll move through it as they grow. They start eating all the tissues around them and causing all sorts of inflammatory issues.
And literally they had to remove 2/3 of this lady's liver. 2/3. I'm pretty sure this was up in Canada. I should have put the locations on these articles, but I forgot to. Sorry, guys. But I know most of these are from Australia, the US, and Canada because I found them for that reason. Because I want to show you guys that this stuff doesn't just happen in, East Asia or South America or any of those places, although it does happen more commonly there. This stuff does happen in the US. And because we're so exposed to toxins nowadays, our immune systems are so tanked most of the time that we're just more susceptible to this stuff taking over our body. It's not that we're exposed more, because obviously we're probably not in America. I think it's more because of all the stuff we're exposed to, because we live a very sedentary lifestyle. We have horrible food quality in the US. We're just basically creating a toxic environment in our body that allows these infections to grow and thrive, that allows cancer to grow and thrive, which is why we have some of the highest cancer rates in the world, is a lot of these toxins in our body. So basically it just says a dull ache in her right ribs led to a grim diagnosis, then a startling discovery. So this lady went into surgery thinking she had liver cancer. They pulled out this giant worm that had gotten so big that it destroyed 2/3 of her liver. So again, fluid-filled cyst in your abdominal cavity, probably a parasite, most likely a parasite. It's probably the number one symptom that people just don't really realize. And I wish my doctor had known that when I was 18 and I got it removed, because it would have saved me, 12 years of struggling, trying to figure out what the heck was going on with me, or 14 years of struggling. It was a mess. So anyways, that one was pretty wild, huge. Here's another disturbing one. So again, when I said parasites can travel through the body, here's a great example. The blemishes moving around on her face turned out to be a parasitic worm. So this lady literally notices a bump by her nose, and then the next day, a few days later, it's up above her eye, and then it's in her lip, and they go in and just cut it out, and they pull out this big worm that was a parasite. So this woman literally had a parasite moving around in her face, damaging tissues, creating weird swelling and bumps on her face, and they found out it was a parasite. So this stuff is more common than you think it is, guys. So don't take it for granted. It does happen a lot more frequently than you think it does. And then there's one more. Oh no, we already talked about that one. The live worm from the brain. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank God mine wasn't that bad. Holy smokes. Although I really wish that when they went in for surgery when I was 18, they would have found that giant worm and pulled that sucker out. But anyways, here we are. All right, so it is not just a third world problem, guys. I really just want to ingrain that in your head. This stuff does happen in America. Again, about 75% of my patients show up with parasites on their testing, probably around there. Again, most of the people I work with have gut issues, so it's going to be more common when you have chronic gut stuff going on. But it still is pretty significant that a majority of the people I work with have parasites. And they send me pictures. If you guys want to see some of the pictures of the parasites that came out of the people I work with, go on my Instagram. It's at Dr. Kate Davis, and it's one of the pinned posts that I have on there, but you can check out all those pictures. I also have another video with newer pictures on it of all the people I'm working with right now who have parasites come out. It's pretty wild. You'll be surprised at how many people see them come out. So, all right. So everyone's next question is, holy cow, Dr. Davis, I think I have parasites. How the heck do I get tested for this? And how is it accurate? Great question, you guys. So testing options. The number one thing you'll see is if you go to your MD and you're lucky enough to find a medical doctor who will order a parasite test, it will always be a stool test. These are problematic because they almost always come back as what's called a false negative, which means the test says you do not have parasites, but you actually do. That happened to me. So when I was 24, I was having all sorts of gut issues, like chronic constipation. I'd gone 13 days without a bowel movement, which is horrible if anyone's ever experienced that. I was on Miralax for 11 of those days, didn't work. And I was blessed to find a chiropractor who had a background in myofascial release, which is a type of massage where he knows organ manipulation, all that stuff. He worked on my abdomen. I swear I lost 10 pounds that night. I had to go to the bathroom so much, but that started my healing journey. And then I started cleaning up my diet and I was able to maintain the results until I had a really stressful life event, really bad head-on collision, kind of threw everything out of whack. So if you guys ever have big stressful events in your life, stress is the number one trigger of all of these random symptoms and chronic diseases popping up. So that happened to me. So I had kept all my symptoms at bay as long as I didn't eat gluten, as long as I didn't eat dairy. I kept, really strict paleo diet. But I wasn't healed because every time I strayed from the diet, all the symptoms would come back and I was like, okay, I can't eat that food again. And it was like I was losing these foods that I could eat over those, 8 years. So yeah, so I had a massive massive parasite infection. But the way that I found it, because I had actually, so the doctor I went to, he actually told me, he's like, Kate, I'm pretty sure you have parasites. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I remember taking parasitology in undergrad, and they tell you, this is not found in America, it's in third world countries, if you travel out of the country. And I was like, I haven't traveled out of the country in years. Like, how could I have a parasite? And because I just didn't know. And he was able to order a stool test for me, and it came back negative. And so I was like, oh no, I don't have parasites. And he was like, I'm pretty sure you do. You should go see a naturopath and just, get treated for it just in case. Like, I know those tests don't usually show it. And I didn't listen to him. I was just like, no, it's fine. My diet's good. My gut feels like 90% better, so I don't need to, I'm good. And, young 24-year-old, not the smartest. So yeah, and then these problems came back, 8 years later, when I was struggling, healing from that car accident. I started getting swelling in random joints, migrating joint pain. I started getting constipation again, where I couldn't go to the bathroom every day. I was getting acid reflux, huge energy dips, brain fog was coming back, and I hadn't had that in years because I also had a really bad head injury when I was 18. I had a lot of medical stuff going on. It's been bad, but makes me a great doctor, and I know how to heal a lot of stuff. So I hadn't had brain fog since, that doctor who I saw for the gut issues had healed me from my brain injury that I had. And I started getting all these symptoms back, and I was like, what the heck is going on? And my friend was in town. She had just started working with people like 2 years prior and was getting phenomenal results. She's like, Kate, you either have Lyme disease or parasites or both. Like, there's nothing else that causes all these symptoms you're having. You're basically on the verge of an autoimmune disease if you don't fix this. And so I was like, all right, I'll do whatever, like, just do the test. She actually did a hair test, which I was a little skeptical of, I'm not gonna lie. But she explained this whole thing to me. She's like, look, parasites are not only found in the gut. If you just do a stool test to check for parasites, you're gonna miss it like 90% of the time, because they will go everywhere else in the body, especially if that gut lining gets so broken down that they can now travel through those gaps into your bloodstream and go systemic and lodge themselves in your brain or your liver or your face, like those examples I just showed you. And it makes sense, right? It's like, okay, well, if they're not in my gut, then it's never gonna show up on a stool test. But you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, well, your stool test was negative, so you don't have parasites. That's not true. This thing that came out of me that was 3 feet long, it was about half the thickness of my pinky, pretty dang thick. Like, I have pretty strong hands. I do a lot of lifting and I used to rock climb a lot. So like half of my pinky thickness is, probably someone else's normal pinky. So yeah, it was big, you guys. Like, it was disgusting. I felt so good after that though. It looked like I'd lost like 10 pounds overnight because all the inflammation in my abdomen went away. They don't grow to 3 feet long over 6 months to a year. That's like 10, 20 years in your body that they're able to grow that big. Because most parasites, when they're little tiny babies, they are microscopic. So to grow to over 3 feet long, that thing was at least in my body for 15 years. Because I'd had all those symptoms of when I was a kid, teeth grinding, wetting the bed until I was like 8 or 9 years old, which is not normal. And I didn't know that was, parasite syndrome. Like, who did? Nobody really knew back then. I was having all these symptoms when I was a kid of parasites, constipation, bloating, all this stuff, and nobody picked up on it. They're just like, oh, whatever, she's a teenager, she doesn't eat very well, she'll be fine. It'll go away, as she gets older. And then it got really bad in my 20s. But this, my friend who was in town, she did this hair scan on me. And there are some hair scans. The one that we use is by a company called Cell Wellbeing or For Healthy Cells. They have 2 different names depending on the country they're in, but they're a German company. So it's Cell Wellbeing or For Healthy Cells. So if you can find a practitioner in your area who does that test, that is the best test I've ever found for picking up on parasites. Because what it does is it uses what's called frequency medicine, which basically can detect parasites anywhere in your body. There's no other test that can be like, oh, you have a parasite in your liver. It's like, unless they go in and do a surgery and they're looking for something, most of the time the medical system is not gonna find this stuff. Like all those case studies I just showed you, most of those were accidental findings because they saw something on a scan that looked like cancer, that looked like an overgrowth of something, and it turned out to be a parasite. But there's no other test that I found that will pick up on parasites better than this hair scan. And not all hair scans are made equal. There's like the mineral hair test that people have done before that shows heavy metals and food sensitivities. That's not the one I'm talking about. So this one is awesome because it also shows organ function. Do you have leaky gut? How's your gut functioning? What's affecting your gut? What's affecting your immune system? What infections are in your body? What toxins? What nutrient deficiencies do you have? What organ systems are messed up so that you can actually detox safely? So if you get a stool test done, it's probably going to show up negative. You're going to spend $300 just to find out that you don't have them, supposedly. And then once you actually find out that you do have them, you're going to see tons of them come out. And it's really gross, but also really satisfying because my gut has felt amazing since then. So the proper way to get rid of these, you guys, again, like I talked about throughout the video, make sure you have normal bowel movements. If you have bloating or leaky gut or acid reflux or constipation or diarrhea, do not start with a parasite cleanse. You will get a detox reaction. You'll feel probably 10 times worse than you did before you started. And I say this because I've seen it so many times. I have so many people who reach out to me who are like, I tried a parasite cleanse, I have IBS and I feel terrible now. And I'm like, yeah, because you have IBS. Why didn't you fix the gut lining? Why didn't the person you're working with say, hey, maybe we need to look at how the gut is functioning and make sure you can have normal bowel movements before we start releasing a ton of toxins. And a lot of people don't know this. When you kill off parasites with herbs, with a detox supplement, they release a huge amount of toxic waste into your body. So it's so important that you heal those drainage pathways first. So if you have leaky gut, you've got to heal that gut lining before you start releasing parasites. So for me, I didn't even start detoxing parasites until month 2 or 3. And then I didn't do systemic parasites because you got to start in the gut, heal the gut first. I didn't do systemic parasite cleanses until month 4 and 5 that I was detoxing. So you have to have patience, you guys. It's not just a quick fix. If you've had these issues for a long period of time, work with someone who knows what they're doing. Work with someone who knows how to heal the gut lining, who knows how to heal the gallbladder, who knows how to heal the liver and get it functioning again so that you have good drainage pathways so that when you start releasing all those toxins, they have somewhere to go out of your body and not systemically throughout your whole system, affecting every other organ in the process. So I've had to treat people who got debilitating brain fog from detoxing improperly, who had horrible energy issues, who had worse gut pain than before they did it because they didn't do it in the right order. So if you're working with someone and they don't know anything about drainage pathways and they haven't addressed this in you, find a new doctor. Because I've seen this way too many times. It's one of my pet peeves. But I was lucky enough to obviously have a friend who knew how to do this the right way, who looked at that stuff first, who gave me a test that showed me everything she needed to know what order to treat me in. So we had to heal my leaky gut. We had to heal my gallbladder. My gallbladder wasn't functioning. The only drainage pathway that was working on me was my liver somehow. So I had a really strong liver, but we had to heal those organs first. And then we went after the parasites and holy cow, I felt so good. Like the best my gut had ever felt since I was a kid, like before all the gut stuff started. So you guys, this stuff is reversible. It is treatable. Work with someone who knows what they're doing. Do not try to just buy a kit online and do it yourself. You're gonna get a nasty infection or a detox reaction. Or you're just not gonna notice anything. You're gonna be like, oh, this didn't work. And it's like, no, you didn't do it the right way. Or there's some other co-infection going on. So, things like mold and heavy metals can also allow an environment for parasites to grow in your gut. So if you don't address everything, if you don't target every infection in your body and get all of it out, if you don't target the heavy metals, the chemicals, the pesticide residue that's stuck in your body and creating constant inflammation and tanking your immune system and tanking your gut health, you're never going to get rid of the parasites. So you guys, you have to look at everything. Get tested for, you don't have to use a hair test. It's just the cheapest, most affordable option that shows you everything that you would normally get on blood testing, urinalysis, saliva testing, stool testing. And honestly, I found that it picks up so much more information than all of those tests combined, and you save about $1,500 doing that route versus all the other tests that, are pretty standard and traditional in functional medicine and naturopathy. So you can do all those tests. It's gonna cost you probably $1,500 to $2,000. So just know, if you wanna see exactly the type of mold you have, exactly the type of parasite, go that route. If you just wanna see, do I have this in my body? It doesn't really matter, because if you use a good detox program, it's gonna get all of it out anyways. It doesn't really matter what kind of parasite, what kind of mold. It's just good to know what's in your body so you can target and attack everything and heal the organs first to get yourself good results. So this is what I use with my patients. They get phenomenal results. If you guys want to see some of my testimonies, go head over to Instagram at Dr. Kate Davis and just look through those. But hope this was informative. Hope this was helpful. I know I covered a lot of information. So please leave your comments, leave your questions below. I want to see what you guys have questions on. I want to see, what you think about the questions that I asked you during this video, because I know some of it might rub some people the wrong way, but it's good to ask these questions. So yeah, I hope this was informative. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And again, just tune in every Monday. I'm gonna be posting videos for you guys that are longer form content. And if you guys want me to do a video on any specific topic, just please leave a comment below, and I'm happy to put something together for you guys.